The jungle was silent that morning, the kind of silence that feels alive, as if the trees themselves are holding their breath. Thick mist drifted over the emerald canopy, swallowing the mountains in pale white fog. Somewhere above those clouds, 3 American aircraft were making their final radio transmission. Visibility low, fuel running out, may have to turn back. It was June 7, 1944, the last message ever received from Flight Squadron 19. Moments later, the jungle below would claim them forever. World War II was at its peak, and the Pacific skies were crowded with reconnaissance missions. The men of Squadron 19 were seasoned pilots. Their job that day was simple: survey a narrow stretch of uncharted jungle, note terrain changes, and return before nightfall. The planes were old but dependable. The weather, while cloudy, posed no unusual threat. At sunrise, they took off with quiet confidence, unaware that they were flying straight into one of history's great mysteries. By noon, headquarters expected their first check-in. It never came. At first, radio silence wasn't alarming. Storms often interfered with transmission. But by dusk, command grew uneasy. Search planes were dispatched. They combed hundreds of square miles for days, following every possible route. Nothing. No wreckage, no smoke, no parachutes. It was as if the sky had swallowed them whole. When the search finally ended, the mission was marked: lost in action. 3 planes, 9 men, gone without a trace. Years passed, and the war itself became history. But in villages deep within that jungle, strange stories began to surface. Of distant engine noises on windless nights, of metallic fragments found in riverbeds, of eerie lights drifting above the treetops after storms. Hunters spoke of finding an old flight jacket tangled in vines, a rusted compass pointing nowhere. Each clue vanished as quickly as it appeared, reclaimed by rain and soil. No official expedition ever confirmed the tales, and the legend of the vanished squadron faded into folklore. Then, 75 years later, history stirred again. In 2019, a team of archaeologists, drone pilots, and local guides arrived in the same remote region. Their goal was to use modern technology to locate lost wartime aircraft. They carried no weapons, only drones, mapping gear, and hope. For a week, they scanned ridge after ridge, canopy after canopy, and found nothing but endless green. The jungle was winning again. On the 7th evening, just as daylight began to bleed into dusk, one of the drone operators noticed a flicker, a sharp glint of reflected sunlight deep inside the forest. At first, it seemed like a rock face, but when the drone adjusted its angle, the camera caught the unmistakable curve of a metal wing, half buried, half consumed by roots. The entire team froze around the monitor. They had found something. The next morning, they began their descent toward the coordinates. The trek took 6 hours through brutal terrain. Slopes, slick with moss, leeches clinging to boots, the air so heavy it felt like wading through water. When they finally broke through the last line of bamboo, they saw it the remains of an aircraft, twisted and rusted, lying peacefully beneath a blanket of vines. The jungle had built a tomb around it. Engines were fused to soil, trees had grown through the fuselage, their roots curling around the metal like skeletal fingers. Nearby lay the shattered remains of gauges, bullet casings, and a dented helmet. On a small piece of corroded aluminum, faint markings were still visible, the US insignia of the 1940s. It was undeniable. This was one of the missing planes of Squadron 19. And then came the discovery that silenced everyone. Beneath the layer of damp leaves, they found a single rusted dog tag. The letters were barely legible, but after cleaning, the name emerged: LT. Robert, Bobby, Hale, one of the pilots listed as missing since 1944. For the first time in 75 years, the lost had been found. Back at camp, the team pored over maps and aerial images. Judging by the wreckage, the plane hadn't been shot down. There were no signs of explosion or impact fire. The landing gear was partially extended, suggesting the pilot had attempted an emergency landing. The valley's ridges rose steeply on all sides, a natural trap hidden from above. Investigators later theorized that the crew may have survived the crash. But what happened afterward is a question that still haunts researchers. No human remains were recovered. No weapons, no journals, no sign of a camp. Only silence, endless and ancient. Locals spoke of lights in that same valley on stormy nights. Soft glows moving through the trees, accompanied by the faint hum of engines. Elders warned the team not to stay after dark. "The forest remembers," one said. "The mountain doesn't give back what it takes." The explorers respected the superstition, but couldn't ignore the chill it sent down their spines. Days later, the site was fully documented, and the team returned home. The footage they released would soon travel across the world. Haunting drone shots of twisted aircraft, moss, covered wings, and time, frozen instruments. News outlets called it one of the most significant World War II discoveries of the decade. Families of the missing pilots reached out, some crying as they watched the videos, finally knowing where their loved ones had come to rest. Military experts confirmed the findings through serial numbers and manufacturing codes. The report was brief but profound. Wreckage corresponds to Flight Squadron 19, lost June 7, 1944. After decades of silence, the jungle had whispered the truth. But not all answers were found. 2 more planes from the squadron remain missing to this day. Satellite imagery hints at possible debris scattered miles away, but thick vegetation conceals everything. Some believe those planes lie deeper within the same valley, preserved by mudslides and roots. Others think the pilots may have attempted to hike out, vanishing into the wilderness long before rescue ever arrived. The truth may still be out there, waiting beneath centuries of growth. Today, that crash site stands as a memorial. A simple wooden cross, hand-carved by locals, rises amid the wreckage. A small plaque reads, "In memory of those who flew, fought, and never returned." Visitors describe an eerie stillness there. No wind, no birdsong, just the distant hum of insects and the echo of engines that no longer exist. Standing among those relics, you can almost imagine the final moments. The storm closing in, fuel gauges dropping. The desperate voice over the radio calling for bearings that would never come. And then silence. Perhaps that's why the place feels sacred, because it reminds us how fragile history is, and how easily stories can be swallowed by time. The discovery of Squadron 19's resting place isn't just about aircraft or war. It's about memory. It's about people who vanished chasing duty, and a world that kept turning without them until someone finally listened. The jungle held them in secret for 75 years, and when the time was right, it revealed their story once more. If you look closely, the earth beneath the wings is still soft, still damp. It breathes. The jungle doesn't forget, it only waits. And maybe, somewhere beyond that ridge, the remaining aircraft are still there, waiting for another eye in the sky to find them. 75 years of silence, broken by the hum of a drone. A whisper from the past carried through the static of history. The vanished squadron is no longer lost. They are finally home. And as we uncover stories like these, we're reminded that our world is filled with mysteries still hidden beneath the surface. Forgotten inventions, untold histories, and lost civilizations just waiting to be rediscovered. If you love exploring the hidden side of history, where truth meets legend and time itself holds its breath, then don't let this story be the last. Subscribe to this channel, join our journey into the past, and together we'll keep these forgotten stories alive, one mystery at a time.